Hello, welcome to Design Time. I'm Jackie Lacey. I want to thank everyone first for all of the great responses and likes and shares that we got with our video last week on about using calla lilies, or maybe it was the week before. I try to do one every week so they start to run together. But we certainly do appreciate when you communicate to us, let us know that you're enjoying the videos that we produce and post, and that the information is helpful, because that's really what it's all about. And in response to that, we had someone reach out to us that asked about using Cymbidium orchids. They should come packaged like that so that they are protected. I always save this because it's not over until everything's over. I can use this batting for creating a soft cradle for flowers to wear or something like that in a container. Sometimes I'll take the plastic, pardon the noise, wad it up, bind it up with some moss and some bouillon, use it to make an orb that can be stuck down into something. Again, everything that we get in, we pay for, so try to think of some way that you can recycle, repurpose, or reuse that product. That'll be another video. Now, when they come in a stem like this, you're going to count the number of blooms, divide the number of blooms by what the cost is per stem. That should give you a bloom cost. And if you're going to separate them, make sure that you start by separating close down on the bottom of the stem. If you start right away removing these blooms, then you've sort of destroyed the top of the stem to be used in a tall design, should you want to make something that's tall. I'm going to look at making some things that are a bit smaller, a bit shorter, and also show you how to take care of those. Now, when you're working with anything that you're going to cut from the stem, you want to make sure that however you're going to use that is going to go down into a water source. If we wanted to add the Cymbidium blooms in here, and just a couple of them are great, then I'm going to add them into a water tube, because I've just got this block of foam over so far, so where I want to put this might not have some of that floral foam in there. So I'm going to put them in a tube to make sure that they've got plenty of water. Tube with a cap. I find it much easier to insert the stem into the cap and pull the cap all the way up like I just did, and then insert the stem into the tube. When you start to try to force the bloom down into the tube when it's attached, sometimes you can break it or destroy it, and you want to be really careful about doing that. So now we've got it inserted, we can put it right down into the design like you've seen, and we make sure that our mechanics are covered up. I think probably 2 blooms would be good for this one. Again, we're going to remove the cap from the tube, get the stem started, slide it into position where we'd like for it to go, and then put the cap back on with the water. We're going to tuck this one in right beside, and as you can see there, we've got 2 beautiful blooms in with the other floral products. Let's look and see if we wanted to put this in a bit taller arrangement. Created this one here to begin with. It just has a few calla lilies in it, a couple of ranunculus. Again, I know that you can change up all of this floral content to make things a little less expensive if your budget does not allow. Now, this particular branch is an Andina. I love using it because it's roadside Floria, brought it in from outside. I know everyone doesn't have that option, but you could use a tall palm frond, you could use curly willow, you could use some dissected Italian ruscus, anything like that to sort of give this curve in there and creates a little bit higher look. And then we've got the product that's just close down. Again, we're going to actually put this direct into the midnight foam. So we'll add a couple of orchid blooms. Now for this, because they're going direct into the foam, we don't have to tube them, and that's important because that's less cost. You're not adding the cost of the tube. And all you want to do is to make sure wherever you're going to insert that bloom, let's say we're going to put one right here, we slide the stem clearly into, and see how I'm just grabbing it down close to the throat so that the pressure to push that in the foam remains in a point like this that will not damage the floral product. So that goes direct into the foam. We didn't need to do anything to it. We didn't need to secure it anyway because it will hold right there in place. A lot of times with Cymbidium orchids, you might be using it for a party. For a party, it doesn't necessarily have to have a water source. With Cymbidium orchids, when they're cut from the stem, you're probably going to get at least a good 3 to 4 day expansion on it or survival on it. So for these next couple of blooms that we're going to cut off, I thought we would talk about how we can suspend them from this particular design. Now, anytime that I am not going to use a water source for the stem, I'm going to only leave enough of the stem for me to attach it whatever I want to. If I'm actually gluing it in place using our cold glue, I want to make sure that I cover that up. I call this the wound. Wherever you cut the stem from the floral product, make sure that you're going to cover that up. If we're going to glue this direct to the stem, and I think I will glue one of them and then we'll suspend one so you can see it both ways. Now I've cut that down about as low as I possibly can. You want to trim it as much as possible. We're going to add a little bit of glue right onto that wound like we talked about so that we are actually sealing in the moisture. And that's the important part. It's making sure that that wound or the part that was removed is covered up so that the moisture remains inside the orchid. Now this one we're going to suspend, so I've left this a little longer so I have something to wrap. I'm just going to wrap or just wipe a little bit of the glue on the end there, again, so that we seal in the moisture. That's really what it's all about. We'll let that set a little bit. Now where this one has aerated, because with cold glue it does have to aerate, and I want to tuck it let's say right here on the stem. I'm going to hold it in place where I would like for it to go, and then I'm going to remove it just enough so that it has time to sort of seal up and start to get tacky. That way, as it gets tacky, it's going to hopefully hold right in place, because I'm just applying a little bit of pressure to allow that to secure right in place. Let's hope it stays there. Sometimes you might go back and just a little more pressure to make sure that it truly does stay in place where you want it. Now this one, we've let it dry because we want it to hang suspended from the design like this, or you might try to get it like that. It just depends on how you want to wrap it. If you're going to suspend it like that, then I would say we don't want to leave the stem. By leaving the stem, we're going to let it hang from this little piece of kiwi vine there, and I'm going to use just a little bit of bouillon. We wrap the bouillon securely around the stem, gives it a little bit of a decorative edge as well. Once you've got it sort of wrapped around the stem there, twist to secure it, because remember that as the stem begins to dehydrate, it's going to lose some of that expansion that you've created in there. Okay, now we've got it all wrapped up and ready to suspend. We don't want it to hang down really low, so you don't need a whole lot. I'm just going to cut off what I want, and then make sure you hold it until it stops so that you can see which direction it might be spinning. Wrap it around the kiwi vine, and then I would just secure that bouillon by twisting it into itself, and that will also allow you to twist the orchid bloom to hang in the direction that you would like for it to hang. Now we have some movement, we have some action that's going on in this particular design. Again, the product could be changed out however you want to. What if we want to create something right from the very beginning that we're going to add the orchid blooms into? I'm going to take, this is Fatsia or Aurelia, and I want to base my design with that. I like using that a lot because it gives me a bit of a bit more modern look. So we've just layered the Fatsia right in there to cover up most of the mechanics. As you can see, we can see very little of the foam. Where I can see the foam, I'm going to add in a little bit of Huck, another foliage, just to give it a bit more of a branchy appearance. And it's also covering up that foam because you don't want to see the mechanics. You want to make sure that you have enough in there that the mechanics can't be seen. Just trimming it a little bit as we cover in that last little bit. Now we've completely covered the foam. Since this is a fall time of the year, I'm going to add in a little bit of that beautiful mushroom sponge tucked down in there. It gives it a little bit of texture. Maybe a little bit of fall foliage that we'll tuck in here to the side. Gives it a little bit of color. Oh, how about this? We add in a little bit of the bind wire where we have also maybe attached an acorn here or there. Just gives it, again, a little bit of texture, a little bit of that fall look. I'm going to secure it on one end into the foam so I make sure that it doesn't come out. The great thing about the bind wire is that it is wired and covered, so you can shape it, expand it, give it any kind of appearance that you would like to. Just a little bit of that more rustic look that we've got in there. Now we're going to add in our orchid blooms. And we can see that we can still get down in between where the Foliage foliage is and push the orchid blooms right down into the design so that they have a water source. They're tucked right down in there on the edge. And then I've deconstructed a little bit of this plumosa. I love doing that because it just gives it that outdoorsy fall look where the trees are starting to shed their leaves and their foliage. And now we can see we've got a great little fall design that would be relatively inexpensive depending on the price that you paid for those for those orchid blooms. And then one last look that we'll create today is going to be in this container. And I've got that kubari piece stuck in there. I'm going to start just with some foliage that's tucked down into the water so that it covers that top up. I created some of these lily grass loops to add in, I don't know, just a little bit of upscale look that's tucked right down in there. And then I might want to have one that hangs out on the front there a little bit so that we've got movement. And then I've got only a couple of these left. So I'm going to take a couple off and then leave this a little taller so that I can have that stem go all the way down to the end of the container and have a great water source. It also causes them to sit up a little bit. Now these that I clipped off towards the base, how do I want to add those in? And you can do that in any of the ways that we've looked at, either by hanging it off by a bullion, we might want to glue it onto the lily grass, even if we want to add it in or add it into some of those personal flowers. With orchid blooms, it's recommended that you use a cross piercing. And I know it's really hard to see, but what I've done is taken a small little bit of wire and I've gone through on a horizontal with the stem, and then I'm going to reverse it in the other direction. And so now we have a cross pin because one will bend down one way, one will bend down the other way, and then we're going to tape it. And I'm going to tape it with the green tape. This is just regular floral tape that I am twisting on there. Pull as you twist, that way it causes the glue to actually take effect. And I can air tape so that it can hang on the side of the container simply by attaching that bit of tape to the Kubari mechanics that I had twisted in there, and it will keep it securely in place and give a little bit of action to the design on the table. That might be a little bit low, so we might want to take that up just a little bit so that you can't see your mechanics, but when you twist it together, it should hold it securely in place and you can leave those mechanics exposed, just like so. The other one you might tuck into one of the other designs that you've created, making sure that it goes into the foam or that it gets into a tube, or you've attached it with some of the wire in some way. I hope that all these ideas on the ways to incorporate a few orchid blooms into your everyday work will help you bring the look of your designs up to create that next step to offer an upscale flower at a reduced cost because you bought it by the stem. Be sure and reach out to us anytime that you want to offer or ask for suggestions on videos that we can supply for you, teach you how to do something, or just in general share information together. We hope you've enjoyed this video, and for all of our videos, be sure to log on to floriologyinstitute.com and check us out again next time. I'll see you next time on Design Time. If you enjoyed that video and you'd like to see more, click the subscribe button.